This episode of Blackwood and Fig is brought to you by Purple Circle. If you have a business idea, are you looking for strategy? Head on over to purplecircle.io today. Hey everyone, my name is Will Figueroa, and I am honored to be on episode 2 and your host of Blackwood and Fig. I'm joined by the author himself, KJ Blackwood. KJ, how are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. Very good. Refreshed after last week.
Yeah.
A good week. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you. It's always fun.
This has been fantastic. We've had a few hundred viewers already, and I'm looking forward to growing this with you and diving deep into your mind and really into the media, really into the literature. We spoke a little bit after the show, last week, and to me, this really is a new way of bringing Saturday morning cartoons into a whole new light, really leveraging literature instead of some of the other media that's out there, and really growing an audience that way. I think it's beautiful that I'm here in the States, you're across the pond there in the UK, bringing these two cultures together. I think it's phenomenal that technology allows us to do this. And I know I'm grateful to be here with you and to dive more into 7 endings. Let me pull up the let me pull up your copy here. So as I do that, talk to us a little bit about the inspiration for The Dark Photographer.
Well, there are a couple of things. I mean, everyone knows about Dorian Gray, the Oscar Wilde story, where there's a man who he never seems to age, and it's because there's a portrait of him in the attic, and it's the portrait that ages rather than him, which is a bit, it's a bit supernatural, a bit magical. And I've always found that fascinating. And there's another story by, it's an American writer, I'm sure it's by Shirley Jackson, she's an American writer. I'm pretty sure it was by her. And there was a story about a couple who go to Venice, and there's a very eerie sort of oil painting involved in the story, and her husband disappears, and he turns up in the painting, and it's very nightmarish, and that's always stuck with me as well. And I've always found that fascinating about the way we think about pictures, art, photography, because there are tribes that haven't had much human contact, and they think that if you take their picture, you're taking some of their soul. And I wonder if that's actually true.
Yeah, I wanted to pick your brain on this and dive a little bit more. I want to remind anyone who's watching on the stream live or later in the recording that the first half of the show is going to be spoiler free. So we won't have any spoilers. We're going to talk about the inspiration. We're going to talk about the background. And then as we get into the second half of the show, then we'll give you the warning. So if you haven't read the second story in 7 endings called The Dark Photographer, now would be the time. So if you're watching this on the recording, go ahead and do that right now and pause the recording. Otherwise, I wanted to dive a little bit more culturally speaking, in regards to this, especially in regards to photography. Tell me about the inspiration specifically around the couple, the photography. You got into detail in the book in regards to where the character has taken the picture. Can you speak to us about what images that came to your mind when you were writing the beginning scene of where the photographer is taking a picture of the family?
That scene is actually, in my head, it's a very specific place. I grew up in a town called St Albans, just outside London, and it's an old Roman town, and 2,000 years ago it was the capital of England. It was called Verulamium. And in my head, because I spent so much time there as a kid and as a teenager, hanging out, doing teenager things, there's a park there, like a children's playground, and that is where it is in my head. So there's a lake close by, there are some Roman ruins and walls and things close by. In fact, when I was a child, the walls, the Roman walls, you could actually climb on them because they weren't even fenced off then.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. And that's the park where it's set. And I always remember you'd always see young families, children, always with the mum in this little park. And whenever I think of a park where children and families go, that's the one. It's in St Albans, so it's real. You can go there, and it's a lovely town. It's a lovely park, and it's not somewhere that you'd expect something a bit dark to happen. So it's a happy place for most people, and in fact, it's a happy place at the very beginning of the story. But of course, that changes.
It does.
That's where it is.
It does indeed, and I think it speaks to what we spoke about last week. So if you didn't see the first episode of Blackwood and Fig titled The Maid, where we go over The Maid, definitely watch that again, because our own KJ here speaks a little bit about his writing style and talks about how I guess inspiration comes from gratitude and understanding that things go away or not everything lasts. And so I think there's something to be said there. And there is no difference here at this beautiful park that he speaks about. Can you tell us the inspiration for the characters? There are a set of characters that I feel are just a little specific. There's certain details that you get into for some of the characters, and some you kind of don't. So I want to dive into there and understand who inspired the names of the characters and where they come from.
The couple with the child, they are just a normal English middle class family. That's why she's called Sophie, because they're always called Sophie. He's David. It's just a normal name. And they're inspired by, well, St Albans is that kind of town. I imagine in America, is it Connecticut, somewhere like that? Or
yeah, sure.
It's just, there's a certain type of person. So she's got blonde hair and highlights and everything. It's like Ken and Barbie in a way. But less tacky.
Yeah.
They're just your standard middle class couple, and they've got their lovely child, and everything's wonderful for them. Everything's just perfect. They're living in a wonderful town. Life's easy. Nothing bad happens. And as you said, we discussed it last week. This is a theme in everything I do and think about. Nothing lasts, whether good or bad. Everything is ephemeral. You have the good times, that comes to an end, and then you might have a bad time, but that will come to an end as well. Then you might have another good time. So their perfect life is about to change. And in fact, it's the same with art and beauty. And in fact, that's kind of what this story is about as well. So this photographer, he creates beautiful art. But to create it, he's having to destroy something as well.
Yeah, it's killer, right?
Yeah. Is that a bad thing? Because if you think about it, humanity over the millennia, what lasts? What do we have from human beings from all those years ago? It's art. That's what's left behind. When I die, what will be left behind? Pictures, maybe. A bit of writing. That's what we leave behind. So is that actually more important? Is the art more important than the human beings? I don't know.
Yeah, really interesting. The image of the photographer, before we go into the real story here, the image of the photographer and the sense of the photographer, there's a real sense of I won't say anxiety as much as I will say anticipation.
Yes.
I'll say almost an excitement, quite devilish indeed. Tell me more about this character and who it really represents.
Well, he has a sort of childish anticipation about things. I described the couple, the mother. She's got she's blonde hair, blonde middle class English lady. I describe the photographer as being sort of he's got more dark skin, and I think that's actually because I tend to base the bad characters on myself. That's what I think it is. So
Oh.
so he's
Yeah, tell us more about that, because
Um,
these two characters, both the maid in episode 1 and now the dark photographer, there's a real difference in even how they act and how they approach the other characters who are involved. So tell us a little bit more about that. That's really interesting.
Well, I wonder if a psychiatrist would have an opinion on this. I think the people that have their innocence and perfection taken from them tend to be white middle class people in my story. That's what they tend to be. And I think growing up, I was always a bit of an outsider, being mixed race, and in our village in St Albans, just outside St Albans, I think we were practically the only non-white family, apart from a couple of families that owned the takeaway restaurants. And so I was just surrounded by all these middle-class white people, and I suppose in my head, I perhaps the perfection that you see there, I think it needs to be shown. It can't go on forever. It's not real. So that wonderful perfect life that we think we see from the outside, it's not perfect on the inside, or the perfection won't last. And at some point there will be loss,
Right.
of some sort, and then you have to deal with that, and then you move on, and hopefully something good will happen again.
Yeah.
I think it's because of my background in history. I tend to base the baddie on me. But is he bad? Is he bad? I don't know.
That's a good question. That's and a great teaser for the second half. Before we get there, because we have just a few more minutes before we get to the second half for today. Tell us a little bit more about how your background, and you speak about being mixed race, and I think it's pretty prominent in today's world and in today's kind of environment, for lack of a better term. Really understanding differences. Talk to us about how growing up, feeling different. Tell us how that influenced your writing. What was that like? And do you see that it bleeds into your writing even as you continue today?
Yes, I think it does, because when you grow up feeling like an outsider, as I've got older, though, I think more people feel like outsiders than you realize, because when you look around you think everyone else seems so comfortable in their own skin. You think it's just me. I'm the only one that feels different. But it's rather like if you've got a spot on your face, it's all you see when you look in the mirror, but actually nobody else sees it. So you kind of delude yourself. But I do think good writing tends to be from people that have experienced a feeling of otherness, or who have been through negative experiences. Certainly growing up, when we first came to England, I think my sister and I said we didn't actually realize we were any different, because we grew up in expat communities in the Middle East and in Hong Kong, and so all our friends and our parents' friends were various nationalities, and everyone was very worldly, I suppose. And then coming to the UK, to a little primary school where no one had been anywhere, I think we were just very exotic compared to
of course, my gosh,
the other children. We didn't think about anything like race, although my mother did encounter a lot of racism, which she kept hidden from us when we were young.
Really?
But yes, she needed therapy because of it. It was quite bad. And I think my sister and I, we didn't realize that we were that different until I think once on the school bus, somebody said to my sister, "Go back to China" or something. So what do you mean go back to China? We're not from China. And I think a lot of people experience this. And when you feel a bit like an outsider, I think you start to focus on other things. So whereas today children might lose themselves in gaming and, you know, playing video games, that sort of thing. When I was a kid, we didn't really have video games apart from that thing, you know, with the tennis book, you know, the little dot.
Right.
Yeah. I'd lose myself in books, and I would just read and read and read. And by doing that, I sort of lost myself in different worlds. And God, I read so much. I loved reading so much. I wanted to read in the loo. Everywhere I went, I needed to read. My mum said, "You must, you know, it's unhygienic. You must never read in the loo." So I used to hide books in the towel cupboard. I used to hide books in amongst the towels so that when I went, I could always find a book. And certainly, I think the more you read, the more ideas you get, the more you learn about humanity and emotions. Because I think historically, I mean, there's a limit to how much you can learn just from interacting with other people. But if you read a book, you can lose yourself in someone else's mind. And gosh, used to read things like, you know, D.H. Lawrence and E.M. Forster. And very often, though, when I was younger, it would be that you see a movie and you think, wow, that was good. And then I'd get the book. And the book is always better than the movie, and you get more into the minds of the characters. So I do think that yes, being a bit of an outsider, that's what encouraged me to read, and reading is how you learn about people. And I do think I'm quite a good judge of people's characters, because you see so many different personality types in books. And it helps you then to interact with real people in real life, and which isn't always easy, particularly these days,
Right.
with social media and everything, which I try and stay away from. So I don't have TikTok, I don't have a lot of it, and I don't go on it, you know, too much. But yes, I don't know what to add to that.
No, it totally answers that. You know, on another show that I'm sure other people will know me from, and another podcast that I do, I've often spoken about some of my background, and, you know, touching on the topic of, you know, feeling like an outsider. I was told at 12 or 13 years old by a doctor in school that that I'm not cognitively capable enough. It's almost burned into my psyche that I am not cognitively capable enough to even take tickets at a theater. And so talk about being in the room with your parents. You know, school psychologist is there, because I was having troubles at school. We later, you know, fast forward however many years, we now know it was due to trauma, and that in and of itself can feel like an outsider too, right? To feel like you're the only one who's been through something, right? So I can totally relate in regards to feeling like an outsider. I think everyone can. You know, I don't even think it's one of these things where it's like, you know, only 90% of people. Like, I think everyone at one point in time or another, I guess it's a part of life, right? So I find it interesting that that you even have this separation. So coming back to the book, you even have this dichotomy between the couple, this like you said before, it's almost like Ken and Barbie, right? It's like this image of perfection, and she says, "Oh dear, I'm feeling faint. Oh, let me take you up to the stairs." And you even reference their bedroom as the marital room, right? I think that's really sweet and romantic. So you're really painting this story of what would normally be, for me, it would be what you would see as like a TV family, like this TV family, you know, image of perfection. And then there's the photographer. There's a reason why that, and this is my question to you, because I'm sure that there's a reason why you have such a dichotomy, not just not only for the obvious, but you even dive into, and I'm going to tease this out a little bit, you even dive into the fact that there's some ambiguity in that this photographer may or may not even know what's going on. Can you speak a little bit more about the reason for that separation, and even for a little bit of the ambiguity before we get into the second half?
Well, you see, the photographer, he's, without them even knowing, he's sort of a part of their relationship after he's seen her at the park.
Right.
And he doesn't necessarily even know himself how it happens. He just knows that he can do it. And so he knows he can do what he does. He knows that the result can be wonderful. But he's sort of, without them knowing, he once he clicks that shutter, he's there with them. Even he's not physically there with them, but he's there in their relationship, and it's all going to dissolve. And he sort of loves it. He's just so excited by what's happening.
Yeah,
like a kid at Christmas.
Totally like a kid at Christmas. Can you explain, like any photographer, or not any photographer, but people who, even from a 50,000 foot view, I think we all know that there's digital photography, and then there's, you kind of go into a dark room and you kind of print it out. And is there a reason why you chose to really embellish on the process in and of itself? What was the significance of the processing of the photo versus just a digital shot, right? Because it seems as though this is a modern time, and I don't know if this was, the intention is maybe older or maybe more modern, but you do mention a memory card, so it's like, where are we in the era of time, and if you can speak to that.
He's a digital photograph is too easy. It's too simple. Back in the day, it took effort to make a picture. You take the picture. You had a dark room. You had to be very careful. You had your chemicals, hold things up to dry, and so then it was more like creating art, and hard work went into it. Whereas now, everyone's got a camera in their phone. In fact, even in the story, just having a memory card is a bit old-fashioned, isn't it? But anyone can just take a picture now. You take a picture, there it is. Where's the hard work involved there? There isn't any. And then you can use Photoshop, and you can just make everything look amazing, and without any effort whatsoever.
Right.
But when he does it, I wanted to make it seem a bit more old-fashioned, that there is some effort going into it. So there's some kind of craft there, even though he himself doesn't know how it's happening. He just knows it happens. He knows it has to be in a dark room. He's got his table set as far away from the window as possible, and it, to my mind, it makes it seem more like real art because there's some effort going into it. I mean, you look at amazing sculptures. If anyone could do them, if you could just press a button and there's a sculpture, that's not art.
Right. It would give a whole new meaning for Play-Doh, right?
Every toddler would be an artist. The parents
right.
They are. But yes, because art needs effort. And if it's easy, for example, if the artist has had a wonderful, easy life, the art's not going to be good. I do believe that. If the artist has been through trauma, has been through bereavement, that sort of thing, that's when they create art. I mean, Van Gogh, he was insane. His art came from his madness. So many great writers, even movie producers, directors, they're crazy. That's why they're always in rehab. So art is not easy, and that's why I didn't want it just to be, he takes a digital picture and there it is.
Yeah.
The picture has to take time to develop as well. because it mustn't be too quick. If it's too quick, it's going to be a rubbish picture. So yeah, it's about the effort, and that's why it's a mixture of digital and old-fashioned photography.
I love.
I don't know anything about photography myself. But.
Yeah. Well, that was my next question. Like, how much of photography do you actually know? So I guess you just answered that question.
Only what I've read in books. So
oh, there you go. Right, only what you read in books. That's beautiful. Yeah. I love how even as an author who's writing literature, you know, a piece of art, right? This is a unique piece of art in and of itself. That even as you are writing of a photographer, regardless of the story, that you made it a point to talk about the art of developing that. And you can tell, you know, even in The Maid, you can tell that you appreciate art because there was such a dichotomy between Ascension and then the family and then even, you know, the child, right? So I love when artists love other artists. And in this case, you, I think, so brilliantly write about the art of art. I think it's a great tool, and I think it's a great setup for the next segment, which we're going to get into. This is the moment now because I can't wait anymore. We've been dabbling around, and I gotta get into the second half. So this is your warning. If you haven't finished The Dark Photographer, this is where you stop. But I love how in The Dark Photographer you speak about and use the tool of processing this for what happens to the wife. It's almost a time tool that you use. I thought this was brilliant how you were able to use the time in development to ultimately what happens to the wife in the story. What I have to ask, and this is now we're in the second half, so you know, spoiler free. Like we're gonna go into it. All the spoilers are here now. Okay. Is there a reason why you chose for the wife to go and not the wife and George, the young boy? Why did you choose the wife specifically?
I think because there's only room for one. He only takes one person, and also I think all the great portraits of history tend to be of one person. Unless it's, you know, Madonna and child. And when I think of somebody exhibiting a wonderful picture, I don't imagine them doing it with a child as well. And also that would be maybe too cruel, even beyond what I would want to.
Even for you, really?
That would be too much, mother and child.
I almost feel like that's almost like a palate cleanser because we went from The Maid. Yeah. To now this. So is that like your limit? It's only like maybe two people at a time, tops.
Well, I think there's a limit to how much cruelty you can have or that you can tolerate, and that would be too much for me.
Even for you,
I'm not all bad.
That's interesting. So I want to give a shout out earlier. Let me pull up Georgina. Georgina in the first half of the show was talking about how deep that conversation was. Thank you so much, Georgina, for watching and being a part of the experience. C. Green is asking if we could drop a link in the book for the book. We appreciate the comment, and we love that you think that we're having these interesting and philosophical discussions. So thank you so much, C. Green. I'm actually going to put it in the comments now for you, so you too can have it. So if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, you'll be able to see it in the comments down below. Everything that we mentioned is also going to be in the show notes and the comments. So if you watch us on YouTube, it's all going to be in the description below. So be sure to pick up the book as well as any references. So he spoke about the park. I'll be putting a link to the park and anything else that we reference. We'll be sure to put in the show notes or in the comments in the video below. So thank you so much for being a part of this. We appreciate you all so much. It's so cool. Okay, so he's taken the picture, and you make sure that you write that it is a deep click.
Yeah.
Does he really know? Is it Does he know? Let me start there, right? I think I'm almost burying the lead, maybe, but does he know? Does he know? Because he never goes back, right? You
Yes,
make
he
the point
knows.
to say, "Oh, he does know."
He
Oh
knows,
my
yeah.
gosh!
He doesn't know. He doesn't know how it happens. I don't know if it's something that he invented even, but he knows
Uh,
what's happening. Absolutely, yeah. And he's seen the moment he wants to capture, and
oh
so
my
that's
gosh!
presses clicks, and he only has to do it once, and he knows that's the picture. That's going to be the great one.
Oh, this is so good. So he knows because the way that it was written, it almost seemed like there was an ambiguity. It almost seemed that there was you made it a point, or maybe this is just how I interpreted it, right? And I think that's to the brilliance of your writing. It it was like, oh wait, does he know? Does he
Yeah.
not know? Because even in the processing of the photo, he goes into the room and he stares at the picture and he sees, as the wife is fading away on the other side, he's seeing the blonde hair come in through the picture, and it's uh, it's almost as if, because you made it a point to say that he'll never see them again. Now, is that because he knows what he's doing that he doesn't go back, or yeah, talk to me about like why he purposely doesn't go back, or at least why you write why he'll never see them again.
Well, because he'll never need to. He's got his picture, and in fact,
Mm,
it disturbs even me to think that when he clicks the button, he knows that he's killing her.
wow.
May as well be firing a gun. He knows he's killing her. Um, he doesn't have any remorse about that. He knows that the son's going to be motherless very soon, a couple of days, maybe a week, and he doesn't care because he's going to get his wonderful picture. But
Wow.
also, if you think about it, the way he might view it is that as his picture's being created, yes, she's fading away, but as she goes, this piece of art arrives. It's
Right.
created. So has she really died? Because is she in the picture? As I describe it, it's as if her life force is in the picture.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Her
so
very
maybe,
essence, her very
yeah,
essence,
the very
and the
essence of her.
beauty of life.
Yeah.
And
So is he preserving her for eternity? In fact, that's how we live on anyway, isn't it? Once I die, all that will be left to remember me by is some pictures,
right.
and that's how you keep people alive, isn't
And
it?
maybe some videos, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it does make me think, though, about when I said about these tribes where they think that a bit of your soul dies
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
when your picture's taken. I feel that with all the selfies that everyone takes now, a bit of our soul dies every time you do that because you're just
Are we
focusing
killing
on
ourselves?
yes, you're focusing just on that shallow image looking for perfection. But then I think,
Oh my
is that a bad
gosh.
thing? Is that a bad thing? Because all humanity has ever wanted is beauty.
Right.
And
Right.
everyone just wants to look amazing, even just for a moment, but to keep that moment alive forever. So the photographer, he's giving her immortality, really.
So in your eyes, oh, I love this line of thinking. This is so good. So in your eyes, is he truly a dark photographer, or is he nothing more than a curator of life?
Well, that's good. That's interesting. I think he actually doesn't.
Yes, yes.
He doesn't think enough about it. To
Mm.
he's not being noble. He doesn't actually think that he's giving immortality to the people
This
he's
is why he's the dark photographer, because there's
Yeah.
malintent.
Yes. So, well, it's not so much that he has malintent. It's that he just wants to make these amazing pictures. He doesn't care about the consequences. He doesn't care that somebody has to die to make this art.
Is it about the money? Is it about the money in the gallery for him?
It's
Is it
not about
about?
the money, no. It's about
Oh,
it's not about money. If it was about money, he'd be in a better apartment. So no, it's about being
mm.
admired for being a great artist. That's all it's about.
It's the
And there are,
dire need to be remembered
but
as
there
a
are
great
people like that. There are
photographer.
people who would kill just to be put on a pedestal and remembered.
Wow.
And
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Absolutely. So talk to me about the dark photographer specifically. There's very specific personality traits that you write about in regards to him taking the picture, the processing of the picture. He very specifically has some key behaviors that I wanted to pull out. So he often will check the picture early, right? And you spoke a little bit more about almost like childlike Christmas moments, right? So there's an excitement there. Talk to us a little bit more about the personality traits of the dark photographer. Who inspired them, and why was it important to put these key details for you
well,
for the dark photographer?
I think it's partly because he's kind of based on me, because you know how when you do something again and again, and you know the consequence will always be the same. So he knows every time if he looks at the picture, nothing will change. But you still do it the next time, just in case that's the time. When I was a child, I once went into the garage and I found in a pocket of an old coat a little opal. It's a sweet called an opal fruit. They're called Starburst now. And I ate it, and it was lovely. Every time I went into the garage, I would have another look, just in case there was another. And rationally, I knew there wouldn't be because I'd already had it, but I thought just in case. And so it's a childish way of thinking.
Sure.
And so that's why he checks every time, just in case he'll actually see the process happening, even though he knows if he looks, he won't. So he has to leave it, but he just can't resist having a quick look because he's a bit childish. And I think if he was more mature, well, he wouldn't do what he does if he was more mature. He'd have a bit more compassion.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Can you talk to us a little bit more in regards to the process on the other side, right? So he takes the picture of the wife, the mother, and the child. For whatever reason, only the mother comes back. You've made that.
The child isn't in the picture. It is just the mother.
Oh, okay. So when he takes the picture, you're making it a point then to almost allude to the fact that the child wasn't in the frame.
Well, because in the picture, I describe it as you can see that she's looking at something and she's looking at her son, but he's not actually in the frame.
Okay.
And if he were, that would be taking it too far for me.
Yeah. So even then, there's a line that you don't cross. I love
That's
it.
why in the previous story with the burning of the boy, I alluded to it rather than described it because that would be too horrific for me to even think about.
Oh, isn't that so interesting?
I'd rather leave that to your own imagination.
So talk to us about the processing of he takes the picture. She's gazing out, right? He's taking the life of this mother, of this wife. You put some serious detail in the arguably the unprocessing, if you will, of the mother. Yeah, thank you. The transference, if you will, of beauty from one to the other.
Yes.
Talk to us about what in your mind was that process, and why was it important to do these certain details? You specifically speak about her hair, her eyes. What is it about these details that were so important to you that
Well,
you felt we needed to write about?
I wanted it to start with so when he clicks the button, she feels dizzy, just to show that something's happened and something's
Right,
happened.
right, yeah, it's almost instant, right?
Then she gets home and she feels a bit nauseous and just generally unwell. But yes, I when she then, after she's had her nap, I wanted her hair to be washed out, for the colour to be gone, because as I describe it, it's one of the things you notice about her wonderful hair. You know, it's like shards of golden sunlight. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
and so that's going to be a great part of the picture. And so she starts to lose that, and then her eyes are affected because she had wonderful blue eyes, and the eyes will be a piercing part of the portrait, and of course the eyes are the window to the soul, all that kind of thing, and that it's something that everyone is terrified of losing, is their sight. Of course, just the thought. Yeah, it absolutely scares me.
Yes. And I find it so interesting that you maybe even just 2 lines worth that you mentioned while she's in the arguably her deathbed, that that she loses her sight and that she can't see. Is this a play on the visualization, or is there something more that maybe you didn't have enough time, or whatever the case may be? Can you speak why you only for such a moment spoke about her vision and then the rest of the process?
When it's just a brief mention, I think it has more impact sometimes, because it's you're forced to think more about it and sort of fill in the gaps yourself. And I think that it makes it a bit more shocking, I think. It's so matter of fact, and
yeah,
suddenly she's blind. But of course, the eyes in the picture will look wonderful at that point, which is a positive, I suppose.
I could feel the dark photographer with comments like that from you. I could it's almost as if he's in front of me, which is so good. Oh my gosh. So eventually we get to a point where ultimately the wife passes, right? And what I wanted to ask is, there's a point in which just before she goes to the hospital, she is she's kind of checking herself. It's kind of the next day, and she goes and she asks her husband for a mirror, and she goes and almost as if with a cloth kind of touches her eyes, and then notices that she's bleeding.
Yeah.
I have to ask from the author, in the gallery, is there a blotch in the painting because she touched her eye?
Do you know, that's a really good idea. No, there isn't.
Could the eye of the beholder have saved her life?
Could be. But remember, the painting is perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. Although I love the idea of that, and if I had to write it again, I'd probably.
I have to encourage spin-offs. The characters so far, from the maid to to now the dark photographer, there has to be spin-offs. If in episode 1 Peter would have survived, I would have loved to see a theme, and now this is just fandom speaking to the author, right? I would have loved to have seen a theme where the children of those who have survived, almost Avengers style, final book, and somehow gotten their vengeance, or somehow maybe to get, I don't know. So when I read the first one, I thought, oh gosh, because remember, I thought that Peter had survived, right?
Yeah.
And then I read this, and as I was reading this, I thought, okay, like, he's saving children. Obviously not. Only in the second one, people. Only in the second one. He can only go so far. It's only one child per story, or one person per story, I guess, right? Oh goodness, that's hysterical. But yeah, I just as a fan, and I'm sure others who will read the story will feel the same way. And if not, let us know. Make sure that you text us. Make sure that you email us. Make sure you leave a comment below in the video and let us know what you think and what you would like to see if our own KJ Blackwood were to do spin-offs.
Well, the bleeding eyes thing, it was actually because at the time, Ebola was in the news. And it horrified me that just the thought of bleeding from every orifice, and it's just so horrific that I had to include that, and of course ties in with the blindness as well.
Yeah. Oh, isn't that interesting? So you really are taking elements of your own real life, your own really what's going on in the world, and really developing these characters. That's phenomenal. Okay, so as we go to this last part, a final plug. If you're in the States, be sure to text BAF show to 305-697-6013. There's going to be a bunch of behind the scenes stuff there that we'll be now sending out and giving to you guys. So if you're in the States, we're working on the UK soon, text BAF show to 305-697-6013 for all those details and more. So now we're at the end. The mother has passed, and now we're in this beautiful gallery. I imagine the most, I imagine the beauty of glass and clean and modern, and maybe that's just my own instincts, right? But, and as he's at the gallery, someone approaches him. Speak to us about that. Why a red dress? Why a, talk to us about the moment.
It's because it's a red dress because it's always a red dress, isn't it? So
sure.
In movies and things, it's red is the color of glamour and passion, and like Pretty Woman, she wears a red dress to the opera, and red stands out. And so you have a red Ferrari.
Sure. Blood, passion.
Yes. And so I just want to underline this woman's beauty. She's got wonderful dark hair and this red dress. So she's passionate. She's full of life, and so her husband, he wants to capture her beauty in a photograph, and then as he's saying, "Do you do commissions?" Even in my head, I'm thinking, "No, don't do it."
Oh, I love that. As you're writing it, you're like, "No."
Yeah. And of course, he then says, "Yes, I do actually. Yes." And because he looks at her and thinks, "Oh yes, she'll make a lovely picture. Oh yes, that'll be a good one."
Oh gosh.
And it's going to be game over for her. And so her husband he's kind of signed her death warrant.
Just offed her, right? Just
yeah.
Really.
Yep.
Now, does the husband know?
That would be dark. No.
Very interesting. Yeah, I almost felt as though the way that it was written in the end, it was almost as if maybe this new husband had caught on that these people are now missing, or now these people are again. The dream of spin-offs. Oh my gosh! There's so much more detail that I gotta know.
That would be good actually, because I always wondered this about Henry VIII, for example. You know how he could get married, he would adore his wife, and then he'd be quite happy to cut the head off.
Right.
I thought, how can anyone do that? Somebody that you've shared your life with. How can you get to a point where you're quite happy to kill them? I can't imagine it myself. Well, I suppose most people wouldn't be able to imagine it. But clearly, some people can, though, because they do. How does love turn to hatred like that? So that would be pretty dark if the husband knew that he could sort of execute his wife by having her picture taken and have her transformed into wonderful art.
Spin off. What would you call it? Just out of curiosity, what would you what would be the theme? Thinking of all the stories and 7 endings, what would be the theme for
somehow? Well, the word I use is twisted, because they're all twisted.
Very much so.
Mentally, the protagonists are all a little bit well, they're not right, are they? They're not right up there.
Right.
And their morality is different. And it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I would actually call it, but the word twisted would probably feature in there somewhere.
Interesting. Or at least the theme, a continuation of that theme.
Well, because the thing that I think inspired me most over the years was Roald Dahl's Tales of the Unexpected, which I don't know if that was big in America, but it was huge here. And, you know, he wrote lots of children's books, but he also did like the BFG, that sort of thing. And Charlie.
Sure. Yeah.
But he wrote adult fiction, short stories, and they were amazing. They were so good, and really quite dark and creepy. Some of them, very much for adults. Don't let your kids read
Yeah, young adult, high school, maybe, and older, maybe. For sure.
Yeah. And those really affected me. In fact, at the moment, they're all being shown on TV here during the day on one of the many cable channels that everyone has now.
Sure.
Yeah. So those really did inspire me. And in fact, I think my stories are quite similar.
Yeah. So with the little time that we have left, the last few minutes that we have now, in regards to the dark photographer, is there anything else that you wish that you could have gotten into more, or you want to make sure that those who are reading, you know, there are certain things that, you know, you have to make sure of, or maybe something that you wish you would have put in that that you didn't?
I have to say that idea with about the eye, I like. I really do like that. Yes. Yes. Perhaps it would be nice to add something that not everyone would spot.
Yeah.
That would need a bit of explanation, but I think as it is, the story is quite. It's quite simplistic. It's quite an easy. It's an easy read and a very simple sort of subject, really. So yes, it's not a complicated one, but I think it's the ending I like more than anything. I think rather than the wife dying, for me, the shocking twist is the lady in red, because you know what's going to happen to her. And I find that gives me a little sort of frisson of excitement and dread at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tease us now for next week? Fear of Flying, a love story. Tease us out.
Do you know, this is a story that I love this story because I cried while writing it.
Oh.
And in fact, every time I reread it, at the end, I cry again.
Oh, it broke my heart. I read it over Valentine's Day weekend. You should have warned me. My gosh, Kelvin, my gosh, broke my heart. I hugged my wife so tight. Oh.
And it is a love story.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's the relationship we'd all love to have, I think.
Yeah.
And what's interesting actually is, because a lot of it is in America, I put those places in because I've been to those places. So you might be thinking, why is the Gaylord Opryland Hotel in there?
Right.
Yeah. So
love it.
Grand Ole Opry. So yes, it I think it's a lovely story. It gives me goosebumps. Just thinking of the ending gives me goosebumps now.
Yeah, it really does. It's really well written. Again, we're talking about KJ Blackwood and 7 Endings. We'll be sure to put a link for the book below. Please, let's continue this conversation. Head on over to blackwoodandfig.com. And if you haven't already, you're in the US, be sure to text BAF show to 305-697-6013. KJ, thank you. Thank you so much for your time, for the brilliance of this book. We look forward to seeing you next week. Bye, everyone.
You too.